Unless it's not going to go live and they're just going to look at the tape and then cut it and,
Okay, everybody,
huh?
everybody at the table ready?
Ready.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and watching tonight. This is a workshop that we scheduled here for the 2023 proposed zoning amendments. We normally begin with introductions, and I'll begin with Joanne.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Carlos Adams, Select Board Representative.
Tim Redmond,
Kimberly Peace.
Barbara Griffin?
Jim Raymond.
David Pierce.
Scott Ozuna, Town Engineer.
thank you, everyone. David, you'll be voting this evening on anything if we have to vote on anything. Are we voting on anything tonight, Joanne, or are we just discussing
No,
stuff?
this is just discussion.
Okay, this is just a discussion. All right, we have minutes in our packet. Do we save these for the regular Thursday night meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
we're meeting next week, so
Right.
we'll have them on there.
So I think that I will be happy to turn over this discussion to Joanne for explanation purposes.
Okay, so we're here for a workshop to review some proposed zoning changes that have been put together, and they're just suggestions. If you don't like them, just say so, and certainly take them off, or if you have a suggestion on changing things, that's welcome as well.
Question. Is the new paper in front of us at the desk the same as what was mailed to us?
Yes, I just put it in a specific order, just
Okay.
so it was easier to follow.
All right,
And I did add some backup information.
okay.
So there's 6 articles altogether, and the first one,
Before you begin, Joanne, who proposed these 6 articles?
so I proposed the first
Why don't you just
4.
tell us as we go along?
The first, okay,
The
yeah.
80
easier
the
that
ADU
way.
one came from you.
Right. And,
Corner lot front setback.
no.
No, I'm asking
Oh,
you.
the corner, that was me, and I need some clarification on the language.
Table of uses, commercial, industrial flex zone.
That was from me.
Tattoo parlor.
That was from me.
And eliminate the entire section.
That was the board discussing, based on
Zoning
the
Board of Adjustment,
court decision.
No,
this
that was
board.
us.
our board. So there's nothing
And
here.
then number
that-
6 came from Derek.
Violations.
Mm-hmm.
So is it too late to receive amend zoning petition articles by petition?
No, December 12th, so the date begins, I believe it's November 12th to December 12th.
Okay, so
So we
we're,
have some time for that.
and what is the purpose of tonight's discussion? To just familiarize ourselves with these? We're not going to take any substantive action on them, correct?
No, so we have our first public hearing scheduled for December 8th.
Okay?
And so in order to hold a hearing, we need to put together changes if you'd like to go that route.
Okay.
So we're here tonight to go over some of these suggestions, to see if you'd like to turn them into warrant articles for the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
And you won't hurt my feelings if you don't like them, that's fine.
Does anybody have any questions for Joanne before we begin with the individual items?
So
Good.
the packet in front of you that I left on your table tonight, the first page is the agenda, and then the second and third pages are the articles, and then it goes into the backup material that I'll just discuss quickly with you.
So we're doing this not in the order of the handout, what you mailed us. We're gonna go through this.
No, we're going, it's the same order that the handout was.
It's right there.
Just on more of a spreadsheet than
Yeah.
Just folded over.
You might want to
Oh,
just
okay.
take off the first 2
I've been
pages. Yeah.
shown.
So they're identical, the wording in both the handout as well as,
The
other than,
mailing. They're
other
both
than the
like-
backup material you've
Exactly.
added to the one on the table.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So if you're ready, I'll start
Yeah,
with the
please.
first article. So the first article is regarding the accessory dwelling unit. And the current language says that you cannot go larger than 800 square feet of gross floor space area within the residence. So there have been a few variances granted for larger, I would say up to a maximum of 1,000. And recently, there was a zoning hearing, just maybe a month or so ago, where someone came in, wanted to go larger than 800, but also had kind of a back and forth with the zoning board about what was included as the gross space. And so I looked to see what other towns do, and the actual write-up that we were given as planners from, you know, the state association and the municipal association and everything, it never mentions gross. It just says, you know, no larger than. The state doesn't allow larger than, I believe it's 800.
750 is what your paperwork.
750, okay. So, or less than 750.
Yeah, right.
So, but it doesn't, nowhere does it say gross. I feel like we're the only ones using gross, and I don't want to change that because I don't know how it will affect other things in the building side. So, the zoning board had a discussion with the applicant about, there was the shared space, like a hallway or a stairway or something like that. And some of the zoning board members felt that that should be included in the accessory dwelling unit
So the
square
underlying,
footage.
the underlying section is the suggestion of the zoning board of adjustment.
No, no. They denied the hearing. They came back with an appeal. I don't know what happened with the outcome of the appeal, because that was just recently, but there is discussion, and so I had a conversation with Derek about it, and he was saying how it's not clear in the ordinance of what's included, what's not included. And it doesn't make sense to include a stairway that leads to the main house for the accessory dwelling, or a hallway or something like that. Because then you're taking away the living space of the actual unit.
Barbara?
Well, this goes to my point, that these are not being built as they were sold to be. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to them. And as an example, I will go to Pinardville on 114, Anna's Gift Shop. What is that addition that's going on that home?
Is that the one on the corner?
Yes.
So I remember driving by there several months ago. It was already constructed, and I took a second look and I saw that it looked like, to me, it looked like another house was being built. That I know they went to the zoning board for some sort of approval. I don't know what it was. I'd have to look that one up. But
So that would probably be an ADU.
it could be, or it could be an
Okay,
addition.
so that's
I
what's
don't know.
happening. When you're starting to talk to me about hallways and stairways, when this was first presented, it was as if there was going to be an actual door from the main house to what was being added on. Because we talked about, remember whether the door, who had access to the door, if it was an actual entrance or not to the unit when we started these discussions on this?
And that is still a requirement.
Right, so the door, if the door is from the main residence and we're building hallways to another unit, I would argue we don't have accessory dwelling units. We have 2 units of housing on a lot. Because the whole point of having a joint door has been extinguished. Because the point of that was that it was going to actually be part of the main structure.
It would be a common door.
Right. So that's my first comment is I don't think what happened at Anna's Gift Shop was what was intended by the ADU.
Well, as long as that was an ADU, we don't know if that's an ADU.
Well, I don't know,
or not.
but we probably need to
We
find
can't
that.
use that as an example right now.
But the fact we're talking about hallways
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
entryways and stairways
Yeah.
tells me it is,
Well,
or something like that would be, because if it's a stairway in the ADU, it clearly would be part of the space of the ADU as compared to a connection.
So the ADU, currently, the ADU needs to be attached, and there needs to be an internal connection. But I think it was either last year or the year before, you took off the requirement for not being able to provide the outside doorway access along the front of the building. So now someone could add an ADU and have like their own door that faces to the outside.
That doesn't address my issue with it. There was always an ability to have another
I think
door.
Barbara's issue is almost a separate rectangular
Yeah.
Right.
structure to the rear of a present house, and they put a breezeway
Right.
connecting the two.
And
Which you see
that's
samples of
allowed
around
now.
Yeah.
They can do that now. But what I'm saying is, the breezeway is now, in some people's eyes, not everyone, but some people on the zoning board, they're thinking that this breezeway now is considered part of the square footage of the ADU, when it's actually
Because the
shared as
breezeway
an
was-
entranceway,
The breezeway was built to facilitate
the house in the
the
first place.
ADU.
No.
This
Well,
No, in
not-
this particular.
Okay, it depends. Some
This
people already have a
this entire
breezeway.
discussion of breezeways is in direct conflict with this statement here. It says within the residence. It doesn't say adjacent to the residence, it says within the residence. When if you have a big house and you want to do an ADU within the residence, that's what this states. If you're doing a separate building with a breezeway, that's not an ADU anymore because it's not prescribed in the description here.
Well,
Well,
people-
well is not a word.
People are
It is
doing
wrong.
that. They're building ADUs with
Okay, then they're
breezeways.
not, then
So they're
then
not
our
ADUs
definition
then?
is wrong, because those are not what I contemplated as ADUs.
Well, then
I
they're,
don't think
then
that's
they're,
what they
then
were sold
they're
as.
issuing permits for improperly for ADUs that are not in compliance with the regulation, because it says within the residence. 3 words are very clear.
So they don't even, so what's happening is we're having ADUs built that don't even have an adjoining roof. And I remember discussions about roofs in this. And we're essentially building separate structures on lots as an ADU.
And the other thing that's happening too is I hate to be the ADU police, but how do we know that these are not gonna become rental
Of
apartments?
course they are.
Well, that's what they.
They can be
They
rental
can.
apartments now. That state law says that you don't have to.
Rent to whom? Just any Joe wants
Yeah.
to rent from you?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what
But
they're.
I always thought
the
ADUs were
law was
designed to
changed
accommodate
for.
family members.
Well,
No,
that's how
that's
they.
the old in-law apartments. The law has changed since then because they're
That's how they
trying.
started this.
Towns such as Bedford, which I've included their info in here, are trying to encourage people to build ADUs because there is a lack of housing going on. And for people who can't afford to buy a house, and I'm not going to say just, we used to say in Bedford, but it's actually everywhere right now. They can't afford to buy a house, so and some of them can't even afford to pay the rents that are being charged in New Hampshire.
We are way over the muddy line right now.
So
Because the 80,
this is a way to provide housing for possibly a college student or, whoever that needs housing that can't afford to pay.
So the statement that an accessory dwelling unit was prescribed to be for a family member no longer stands. The law has changed on that.
The law has changed a few
right,
years
that's what they
now.
do. They came in and they sold it as that.
Okay.
We need it for caretakers and family members, and we
So
need to
now
have
it's
this.
now it's apartments for rent.
Now it's apartments for rent.
Okay.
But
Joanne,
there-
why did you underline those last 3 sentences? Why are they underlined?
Because those are new.
Those are
Those
the
are new. See, this is
Yes.
what I've been trying to get to, but I haven't got there yet.
Those are new,
So that's new language.
correct,
thank you.
Proposed new language.
Okay.
correct.
Kimberly?
What do we think the idea, because the current definition right now stops with 1,000 square feet of gross floor area within the residence. I don't understand, an accessory dwelling unit to me is separate construction. So what is within the residence? Like, that actually confuses me. I have always thought of accessory dwelling units actually as just what we're talking about, like a little breezeway, and then there's like the overgarage
Well,
apartment
then
or
this
whatever it
then This is
is.
written incorrectly.
Well, I don't understand what within the residence would be, because wouldn't that be part of the residence? What,
That means you're
I'm-
taking existing rooms and reconfiguring them.
Right,
to
and
be
making a bedroom into a kitchen or
separate-
something, yeah.
Can I read
Anybody needs
something more?
permit
Because
for
there's
that.
more to this article, this section. So that's exactly what it says. Then it says, an accessory dwelling unit shall be constructed within or attached to a single-family
Or
residence.
attached.
oh, that
Now
makes
At
we have
least one interior connecting door or other access for persons to pass between the primary and the accessory shall be provided.
Why
So
aren't we
why
copying
would
that
I want,
definition?
why would I want to have a door within my house so the tenants could walk into my house? That's.
Well, that's how they're
Well, they
getting around it.
can't.
They're
That's why
doing
it's
these,
accessory.
You can keep it locked.
It's
You don't have
counterintuitive.
to have it open.
that's why they're not really being built as accessory dwelling units to the main residence. They're becoming completely separate living units. So all of these, you know, and I'm,
Can we abide by state law and just print the state law and leave it that way? Whatever the
Well-
state standing is and not have to be in violation of the state statute?
well, I'm waiting for the day that somebody comes and says, you need to allow me to build a rental unit on my property in residential zoning because you allow it as an ADA. Why do I have to have it attached?
Well, the zoning board of
Well,
adjustment is
They
getting
have
applications
granted
for that
Yeah.
a few
So this is
detached.
a rental property.
arrangement.
But it is a rental, and that's part of the state law change, is that to allow it to be rental.
Okay.
They're not trying to sneak
Thank you for that
anything.
clarification. It sounded really sneaky.
All right,
before.
well, I have a question which actually goes to the tattoo parlor also.
Well,
Because what came to me when I looked at this, I said, oh, okay, so how do we define an accessory dwelling unit? So there is, accessory dwelling unit is not in our definition session. The only thing that's in our definition session is accessory, where is it?
chicken coop.
Accessory building is a building on the same lot with and of a nature incidental and subordinate to the principal building. So there's no
Definition for ADU.
definition of an accessory dwelling unit. So
We should be adding one, yes.
should we be adding one before we get into defining what the zoning ordinance is in regards to making one?
Absolutely.
We discussed this at one point.
Define it first.
Yeah, there's like a kitchen or a bathroom, like something makes it a dwelling unit.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not just an open space, like your attic.
Yeah,
No,
it
it's a
has
place
to
where
be
someone can
finished
live
with-
independently
Right,
and cook
that's what
and eat.
I'm, right, so I agree, we need a sort of definition, what makes a dwelling unit?
I think we have that. Don't we have dwelling unit defined?
We do have dwelling units.
So you're saying under dwelling unit, okay.
Well, I think accessory dwelling unit should have its own definition because it's a hot topic.
Well,
We do
Dwell-
have it,
dwelling-
actually, it's right
Oh,
here.
it says accessory dwelling,
That is subordinate to that of a principal single-family dwelling unit
And
and
contains
containing
cooking
cooking
facilities.
facilities.
so,
accessory
discussed.
building,
so you have to look that up under dwelling as compared to accessory.
which is different than dwelling,
Yeah,
accessory
I
building.
think we should add an accessory dwelling unit as a standalone definition.
Standalone definition.
Yeah.
Just,
Even if you-
if we
But it's
have it
in here
two-
as a standalone definition.
So just have it two places.
Because all the other types of units start with dwelling single-family, dwelling unit seasonal.
But we have accessory building as a
So
word.
why don't we have, yeah,
I think
building
we should have
accessory?
standalone definition because this is going to be an up-and-coming topic for a lot of discussions, and I think its own definition would be helpful
Well,
right out the gate.
It's right here, it's
Just put it in two places. Leave
Yeah,
it
but if someone
dwelling
wants to
two
look for,
places.
but if
And
someone wants to
add it as-
read accessory dwelling unit, they might not find it because they wouldn't know enough to go to dwelling unit.
Okay,
Because in the supplemental standards, 5.1 is accessory buildings and 5.2 is accessory dwelling unit, not dwelling,
Common accessory.
comma, accessory.
I agree. And I think we should definitely add that, how you could expand it on that definition, within or attached to the residence.
Yeah, or attached, if that's what it needs to
Yeah,
say.
whatever that statement was that you read.
Yeah, you need to expand
Yeah,
that
'cause
little,
that-
that last little
I
And
sentence.
it needs to be shall. A dwelling unit is,
it's just a definition.
it's not may be attached, it is.
And I think once it's attached, I think breezeways and entryways should be included.
I do too.
Yeah.
Because that is a pull-off of the primary residence that should be included in square footage
Yeah,
calculations.
that's the attachment. Yeah, that's how.
And without that, you don't have it.
If we do that, then I would support moving it from up to 1,000 square feet then.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Yep.
Well,
So do you want me to remove the language that's underlined?
No, I think it says shall include, not does not include.
Oh, yeah, so we're
Doesn't-
opposite.
Just
Square
put in
foot
place does
shall
not with
include.
shall.
Yeah,
Shall
Yep,
include
Shall include.
shared space between the single-family home and the ADU, such
Yes.
as.
yeah, I have a question.
Go.
If you're going to include, let's say, a hallway,
Yep.
as square footage
Yep.
to the accessory dwelling unit, okay, then does that mean that that is not part of the main dwelling? as
No,
far
it's
as
part of the
square footage?
accessory unit.
I understand what you're saying, okay? What I'm saying is you have an existing structure, okay? And you got a staircase,
Yeah.
okay? Now, you add the ADU, okay? Now, you want to include that shared common space as square footage to the ADU. Now, you're removing it from the existing.
So then change the language to state at the end of the sentence, it says, when the ADU is detached from the main home.
No, that's not my point.
No, that is your
No,
point.
Yeah, your point is if it's already existing, why are we now moving it from being part of the existing structure to the new
Well,
structure?
I'm looking at it for,
We understand.
if you're going to include it as square footage from one, I want to make sure that it's not being included twice in a calculation for square footage.
You differentiate between within the residence or attached to the residence.
So, but how do you do that? Like,
Attached to the residence or within the
if
residence.
it's already attached before they do anything, before they build on an ADU?
Right, if it's not part of the permit for the ADU, it's already existed and being,
But if they're building a breezeway to attach it?
that's new. That's
new.
part of the ADU.
So, I had another question, sorry, just popped out of my head.
I think for me, the stairways
Oh, I know what
would
it was.
remove that discrepancy, because there could have been a stairway there before.
Right. So do you want to
So we're
just,
really talking about hallways, breezeways, entryways, storage areas. I would be okay taking stairways off of that to
yeah,
prevent
that
that
makes good
confusion.
sense.
Okay, and then
Unless-
Joanne, in the second sentence, we would
Unless,
have,
of course, the stairway is from the main residence up to the second floor of your garage, and that becomes your
Right.
ADU.
ADU, yeah.
Because there
but
was one
wasn't it there
approved,
before?
CBA did.
Well, if you build a garage and you put the ADU above the garage,
Right.
you have to provide a stairway to get to the ADU as part of the new construction.
I know, I guess I don't see the sense in providing the stairway in the ADU square footage. I mean, especially if it's already.
What if it's within the ADU, the walls of the ADU, if it's not part of the entryway?
Yeah, that's possible.
I don't know, I mean, what are we
Does
talking,
our
10,
assessor?
20 square feet, what are we talking?
Does our assessor
Kind of
include stairways as square footages, or is a stairway not part of square footage because it's the floor?
No, the floor space is,
I
he
don't
doesn't
know.
cut out for stairways, it's included in your square footage.
Because he measures.
A
The
footprint.
exterior
Standard-
dimension.
There's, BOMAC, I think, is the group that creates these. You measure from interior wall to interior wall
Right.
typically. And so it's an exterior measurement to determine your
Right.
floor area. You don't cut out pieces in the middle to exclude them.
Right.
And if the stairway was external, we'd have to find out how the assessor assesses
Well,
that then.
but under this definition, we would not include external stairs, it's just within the interior. I mean, I'd take within the residence out and put in interior instead.
I guess we could be magnanimous and just exclude it like Joanne's language says.
But if you
I know
want
it-
to you measure floor space, you don't want to go in and measure room by room, you measure it interior wall to
I
interior
know
wall.
it creates a connection, but it's not useful space, they can't do anything with it.
Right, I agree.
A hallway, though, you could certainly have a closet in a hallway,
Yeah,
or
right.
lots of different things, so maybe you're right
No,
about
my
leaving.
stairway's pretty useful space. You can't always use it as a stairway, but it gets used.
What about
Not
decks?
safe.
Place to store laundry.
Out, out there outside, decks.
I don't think that,
But that's not.
What
living
about an
It's not living
emergency
space.
entrance?
Not living
What about an emergency exit from a second floor, because they need the second entrance? Question. Is there any particular interest or reason that we need to have Scott here for a discussion on?
He wants to be here.
You want to be here?
He wants
Wanted
to
to come.
observe
God bless him.
and maybe,
God
maybe-
bless you.
and maybe have
What this
input.
was.
all right.
Maybe I won't come next year.
I tried
Yeah,
not to come this year,
because,
but.
do you know what we're talking about? I don't know, I don't
I
know.
do. I have an accessory dwelling unit.
Oh, do you?
My mother-in-law lives in it.
All right,
Oh,
It's
all right.
being used
That's
for-
why he's here tonight.
All right.
Why don't we simply say that it's 1,000 feet of interior floor space, and excludes
stairways.
stairways, no, excludes the external, exterior stairways, decks, hallway, and walkways. So it's just interior, but then you don't have to go in and measure stairways. Then make it 1,000 feet, so if somebody wants the stairs, the rest of their area will be reduced accordingly, but it'll still be a bigger space than we allow now. Once you start excluding interior stuff, you make the measurement difficult.
Right.
Yeah, you do.
So you would
That's why the BOMAC, whatever it is, standard has an, exterior walls or exterior walls, just where in that wall do you measure?
So you're
Usually it's
saying that if you have an
interior
external staircase that leads to the second floor, you would leave that out or include that in?
No, I would not, for ease, I would not include, let's make this easy to administer.
Okay.
So, I mean,
So you would exclude walkways, decks, exterior, walkways,
exterior.
decks.
Yeah, I don't care.
Stairways.
But when you have to start measuring, where do you measure? Do you measure
Okay.
all the horizontal space on the stairs, the landing space? I mean, what do you do
All
with
right.
that? So,
All right. We got our discussion.
Okay.
Anybody else wants to comment? Barbara?
I think you need to include any area of construction necessitated for access to the ADU. Because arguably, you're saying I could put in a 20-foot breezeway to a unit and it wouldn't be included.
Breezeways are a living space, aren't they, generally?
Well, I don't know that they would be because they might not be heated, they might not have, they might be narrow. And so we're getting way outside of what ADUs were supposed to be at that point. The one at Anna's gift shop is not that long, but that's why I'm watching it, because it's
Is it
essentially.
still under construction?
No, well, the exterior looks done,
Oh.
I don't see anything.
Once we
going on.
determine if that is an ADU, we can include that in our discussion, but until we know that it's
But I'm just,
actually an
it's a good example of another
Well, I just don't want to malign that.
clearly dwelling, and I don't think the gift shop is running anymore, so.
I just don't want to include that on the record as on an
Right.
assumption that it is an ADU, because we don't know.
So a question, so do we want to be talking about living space and then defining what living space is and is not?
No.
Or is that
No.
just add another layer of?
No,
So-
it's another layer.
I don't think we need
problem.
Do we
All right, I'm
still
the only
want
one on
to
this,
call
so.
it gross?
How about we all mark up our ADU definitions in writing of what we think is.
Look at our definition
Bring
of
it back.
floor space, comma, gross, before you do that. Just on page 8, 7, 8, no, page 7, or 107 of our definitions.
Not everyone has their zoning.
It's all right.
No.
Jim can read,
It's
I'll
on
listen.
seven?
Why would you not bring, can't imagine why you'd have your zoning ordinance in hand on a meeting about.
Oh, don't be so logical, Jim.
Yeah, sorry.
What
I
year do you
apologize.
have?
went
I don't
to-
have mine because
I
I
have
just came down from
2021.
Chelsea.
Am I
No,
on this?
you're forgiven. Besides,
I wasn't mindful.
Okay.
you're-
Thank
you're-
you.
You're the fashion model, so you can do whatever you want.
Okay, thank you.
Floor space, comma, gross, the sum of
Oh,
the
okay.
areas of the several floors of a building, including areas used for human occupancy, I don't know why I put that in basement, attics and penthouses, measured from the exterior faces of the walls. Okay, they do exterior, not interior. Does not include cellars, unenclosed porches, or attics not used for human occupancy, or any floor space in accessory buildings or in the main building intended and designed for the parking requirements, or any such floor space intended and designed for accessory heating and ventilating equipment. I don't know why we have that. It shall include the horizontal area on each floor level devoted to stairwell and elevator shafts.
That's because they just do the
Yeah,
end to end.
no, they use exterior.
Right. Well, I know.
Yeah, no, I just
Wall to
commented
wall.
on most rents are based on interior wall to wall, but,
Assessors don't measure insides of houses.
No,
They
that's
measure-
fine.
They hook their tape on the corner,
yeah,
the
no,
corner
it's
board,
fine,
and
no,
that's how they
if
walk.
that's the easy way to do it, be consistent, I don't care, but I'm just looking at what they include, what's excluded. And
Okay.
shouldn't we be consistent in our definition of the ADU
I
floor
believe so.
space that we're
I
imposing?
believe so.
Sure.
You've already got it in writing once, why reinvent it? Anyone else have a comment on ADU?
Have we made a decision?
No.
No, we haven't.
I didn't expect we were gonna make decisions tonight, because we
Well,
still have.
tentative decisions, so we know what wording to put for the hearing.
I think we agreed to go to 1,000 square feet.
Yes.
General agreement.
And why don't we say of interior gross floor area? I guess that's redundant, isn't it? You just say
The way I marked it up,
Floor
Jim,
area, yeah,
Jim,
so it works.
the way I marked it,
Matches
Jim,
the
was
three
1,000
residential.
square feet. You're saying of interior gross floor area.
I'm not sure you need the word interior, the way gross floor area is defined.
But then I added within or attached to the residence. That's what I added to that, because that was part of the discussion.
state's definition, the one that you read.
Oh, for the dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Let me go back to
But I
that
think Jim had a
page.
point before about trying to keep everything simple, easy to administer. So if you already have a definition in there, and if you, I would try to stick with that if you make a separate definition for this.
It helps to have the paragraph self-sufficient with all the attributes in one place.
I understand what you're saying, but we also have a point that we try to keep definitions in the definition section.
You're learning.
Thank you. Have a good teacher.
Even though you didn't bring your zoning book.
Thank
But he had he had the forgiveness factor he came from.
So is it fair to say we are going to go with where Joanna's written in 1,000 square feet of gross floor area within or attached to the residence?
I think you take out within or attached to the residence. What does that add?
Because that's a state statute. It
No,
doesn't
isn't.
say,
No, it isn't.
it's not only within the residence, it's if it's attached to the residence by state statute.
So then, does it work both ways? And then
No,
that
that's our ordinance that says that.
The statute.
Sorry,
Oh.
I didn't mean to
What
put in
says
the-
what?
what you just said. That's not the state statute, that's our ordinance that states that.
Well, I thought you were reading the state statute to us that
That's what I
said it
thought.
could be attached to the residence.
No, our ordinance says an accessory dwelling unit shall be constructed within or attached to a single-family residence.
And is that how the state wording is?
I don't have the state wording with me.
Well, why would we want to have it attached to the residence if it's beyond the state law? I think we should follow the state law.
Because this is what we have now, this is our zoning ordinance that we have now.
Okay.
And it says that you can, the reason it says it is or attached to a single-family residence is because we don't allow them to being attached, and we've been asked this question, to, for instance, a duplex. There are people who want it to attach an accessory dwelling unit to a duplex, which would make it a three-family technically, or not technically, but,
Isn't a duplex considered a single family?
no, a duplex is a two-family.
Do you want me to read you the state definition?
Yes, yeah.
It's in RSA 7471. We do have the books for a purpose too. Accessory dwelling unit means a residential living unit that is within or attached to a single-family dwelling.
There it is. It is.
And
Yeah.
that provides independent living facilities for one or more persons, including provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation on the same parcel of land as the principal dwelling unit it accompanies.
I think that's what
Thank
we
you,
should go
Jim.
with. That's what we should go with, I think.
But
For our
that,
definition.
for our definition, but then what we're dealing with now is the size, and just the
Right.
size. The size cannot exceed
1,000
1,000 feet of
So
some
the change would be from
interior
100 to
floor
1,000?
space,
Yeah,
or
I'm
something.
fine with that.
Yeah.
So interior floor space,
Yeah,
gross or interior?
well, it's gross, we have gross floor area is the term in the ordinance, so we should probably use that.
So then, Jim, does that lay to rest the question of when they come forward with a plan that, for example, has a breezeway? Is that breezeway included in the 1,000 square feet or not?
I think it is. It does not include unenclosed porches in our zoning definition,
Okay,
but an enclosed breezeway would be.
would be. Okay, I'm just making sure that we're correcting, the vagueness that they were asking about. Is it or isn't it in the 1,000 square feet?
So what if, so it's only, from what Barbara said before, I just need to get this clear because people will be asking. It's if they add a breezeway to their home and then they add an accessory dwelling unit, that accessory dwelling unit was built in order to connect, then that's included in the square footage.
Right, well, and think about it, from From a building structure standpoint, you're supposed to have a door, right? A common door. So you either have a door that exists on the current taxed dwelling that you're providing the accessory to, in which case everything on the other side of that door is for the accessory unit, or you already have the breezeway with the door and you're attaching it to that. So if it doesn't exist, they're getting a building permit for it, and it's gonna be part of the new structure. And if it's already there, that's where your common door exists, and it shouldn't be even a calculation, because it's already gonna be on the tax
site.
records as part of the existing structure.
Okay, I just want to get that clear, because I
But
know
then-
people will ask.
That makes sense.
But then the
I mean,
rest,
you're working from a common door, is
but then I think
essentially
the
what
rest
you
of your
need.
statements can stand. Does not include shared space between the single-family home and the ADU, such as a hallway, Barbara. We're talking, we've narrowed it to breezeway right now.
There should be, I don't understand what shared space is when there is supposed to be a dwelling unit and an accessory. By
Separation.
definition, there is not shared space.
Well, say for instance, I've seen some where they've built, it's not really a breezeway, but it's, you kind of step up, it's like an open area, but has a roof over it. So here's the house, here's the accessory. And then it has like a roof that connects the two, and then it may have like some steps up here, and so you have a landing in between, like, so that's
Common
basically you're
porch.
sharing. One door you go this way, the other you go this way in order to enter the premises.
Where's the separate door?
Where's the connecting door?
It's the roof line,
So each unit has its own exterior door then?
Yeah,
correct.
Okay.
And they can have separate doors,
Well then,
but they have to be connected, so they connect it through the roof.
and it's open air or
Open,
open air?
some of them are, yeah.
Well, you know, some of them.
I mean, they're all different, but,
That's where all this problem arises, because there's no continuity.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say, okay, if you don't have walls, and then
Right,
say,
and
well,
I-
if you have walls, we've got to charge you.
and I think the reason for that is because they're adding them on to existing, most of them are probably older structures, so they're all different, there's no like cookie cutter type for each one.
I think shared space is a bad word. I think it maybe be connections between the single-family home and the ADU. But shared space is such a hard term to get your your head around.
I thought the point of Jim's definition was to say that gross, what was the definition? Living space?
The state definition.
Well, what Jim read,
With different definitions, one's a definition in the state statute of accessory dwelling unit. The second is the definition in our ordinance of gross floor area.
right, so I was thinking if we just left it at gross floor area and didn't have this additional text, that's what I was questioning. The gross floor area definition, like, basically puts it to rest, like, breezeways and hallways are in, stairways are out. Like, that's what I thought, so we don't need this underlying text.
is it
That's what I
simpler
thought.
just to say that the gross area of the ADU is everything on the other, the ADU side of the private door?
Well, but we already have a definition, I guess that's what I'm trying to make sure that we stick to what we have, instead of add more words to make it more complicated.
I think we have to protect our position, because there's so many people that are gonna take a breezeway. If we exclude breezeways, they're gonna take that breezeway and they're gonna put their table out there for the summertime, and that's gonna be living space for them in the summertime. So we have to protect our position
But
here
it-
on the square footage.
But, so you're saying a breezeway because it's closed in?
Yeah,
I thought you meant like an open area.
no, open areas are considered decks.
Most,
The open areas would be many of the houses that we have down by the river that slowly had screens put on them.
Right.
Then glass, and then walls. So, if it's got a stable floor and a roof, it gets used.
Well, let's come up with a consensus here so we can move on to our next article. How are we?
What is our goal? It's to restrict the size and to make sure, to the extent possible, they actually are connected, right?
Right.
That's what we're trying to achieve.
How do you measure the size?
Well, hold on, let's just figure out what we're trying to accomplish, and then we figure out how to get there. And if you assume no ordinance is gonna pick up 100% of situations, you can't. You can't, but if we can
Right.
get most of them, and occasionally something will slip through, oh well. And our concern thus far is, I think we've resolved it on defining interior space based on our definition. So the only question now that we're really talking about is the attaching structure, because under our definition, they have to be attached. The state statute allows you to permit unattached, but we do not, we
So
chose
what
not to.
constitutes attached?
Attachment, and how does that get measured? That's the only thing we're
Right.
talking about right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And if you go back to my rule that you can only pick up 95% of the situations, there's always gonna be somebody, what can we establish that makes sense for most of the time?
Right.
And occasionally somebody will find a hole that patch
So
it the
we,
next
so
time.
we give way to the breezeways and the hallways and just let them be and not worry about them?
I don't care, I just wanna, I don't wanna get bogged down in, weird situations. Let's just find something that.
Can I, question?
Barbara, please, just speak, everybody can just speak up tonight.
How many, Joanne, many of our proposed zoning ordinances are proposed by the office because variances are requested, and you don't think that they should need a variance, or you or staff doesn't think they should need a variance. So for some of us, that means that we think that you're just trying to not have to deal with individual requests, that we have a zoning ordinance because that's what you should be doing. So how many of these requests to go, because this started as really a square footage issue, right? We've expanded it way beyond the issue as you brought before us. How many variance requests for an ADU over 800 square feet have there been in the last year? And I meant to email this to you before the meeting so you
I've
could look it
already
up.
checked, and I think it was very few, like 2 or 3.
Okay. I just
So
wanted to get that
are
on
we
the
trying to
record.
develop a problem for a solution, a problem for a solution?
Correct.
Yeah. So with that model, I would just leave it alone and take out all the additional stuff. Unless you want to include something about the attached area, because right now that's not clear. What do you do about the attaching breezeway or structure?
Should you suggest possibly we leave it alone and address it in the future if it becomes problematic a year from now?
Well, if you leave it at 800, you've got a little bit of slippage, because we would have considered turning it to 1,000, but if they have a 200 square foot breezeway, oh well, do we really worry about it?
Yeah, now it's 1,200.
No, we
Leave it
keep it
at
at 800.
800
Oh,
plus 200.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd suggest we not worry about it.
And we're not alone, because look at Derry and Manchester's numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester's a little more built up, so they don't have as much room in their lots, as opposed to Bedford, where they have huge lots, and New Boston. So you gotta think of where the town.
I think
is.
Dunbarton's 5-acre zoning, so they got plenty of land.
Yeah. We're somewhere in between. We have a crowded area and a less crowded area.
Okay, consensus from members. Let's start with the square footage. Dave?
Yes,
No, what is your consensus? 1,000 or 800, leave it.
yes on the 1,000.
I
Jim?
leave it alone.
Barbara?
Leave it alone.
Kimberly?
I like 1,000.
I like to leave it alone.
I'll leave it alone.
I'll leave it alone.
So it sounds like the general consensus is to leave it at 800, Joanne.
And then revisit it next year. We've defined a problem, we can watch it. And you're right, if they are getting a lot of variances, the court will say your ordinance is out of date and so disregard it. So you do have to pay attention to that. But we don't have to respond to couple of variances.
You know, we're 50 square feet over the state minimum.
Yeah. And the question is, how much do we want to encourage these?
I don't, you know,
Now they
they
can have a
serve a
breezeway.
valid purpose,
Yeah, they do.
you know,
That's
but
the
when you're,
question.
but the changes in the rules have occurred, as it always does after the sales pitch and enactment occurs, that we're really creating completely different living structures on a lot, you know, sorry, that was not the purpose for which this first
And if we-
appeared, but
And if we got
so
compelling,
be it.
if we got compelling testimony at the public hearing, we still have
Yeah,
the
we
option
can
to
still-
increase it.
We can revisit, yeah.
Well, no, it
Scott's
needs to
gonna-
be, if we're not changing it.
It's not going to public hearing.
It's not going to
Right,
public
yeah, we don't-
hearing.
We don't need to get public
It
input.
was built in 2010.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh,
All
that,
right,
because
so
I
are we
was gonna
done, are
ask
we
you how
done with
big it was.
accessory dwelling units?
So we're done now. One down.
okay.
We done with accessory dwelling units, everyone?
I didn't build it.
How many more can we talk about and decide we're not gonna do anything?
Let's move on.
I like this.
At this
Then we
rate,
don't
we'll
have to
be
have
here
it.
till
Joanne,
6
corner
o'clock.
lots.
Okay, so currently, corner lots is in our ordinance and states as follows. Where a lot is a corner lot or otherwise has multiple street frontages, front dimensions shall be observed adjacent to one of the frontages. And we ran into this
Right.
year with an application.
Yeah,
So who chooses the frontage? Which, does the developer decide which side of the street will be the frontage? And to me, it doesn't make any sense. So typically, the frontage is where your driveway would be, you know, but not always, but typically. So I looked up just to see what a definition is suggested for lot corner. And it basically, you know, it's on page 2 here in the handout. It basically says, the major problem with corner lots is the designation of the yards opposite the street frontages. Most ordinances require a minimum front yard be maintained on both frontages. I know that's how Hooksett does it, but it's hard to do that here because especially for the lots in Pinardville, where they're so small, and to meet a frontage setback versus a rear or a side is sometimes difficult. So they suggest that a better approach is to permit the applicant to designate one of the streets as frontages that require the house to be built facing the front, and then require the yard opposite to be the rear. So then you have the street frontage, you know, as you're approving these lots, where the frontage should be, I think should be ironed out in the beginning of the process versus the end. And then this way, for sure, the other side of that would be the rear, instead of saying, oh, that's the side, or that's this and that. Remember that conversation we had about
Oh,
that
no,
lot in
yeah.
Pinardville? It just was crazy.
this would be for new construction or for additions and alterations to existing construction?
No, we wouldn't be, those would be grandfathered, but if someone were to develop like a vacant lot,
Right, so it's new.
so it's not just subdivisions, but additions that, I mean, that's already been established where their frontage is, those lots that have existing homes.
So what you're proposing is we do it plan by plan, but we ask the applicant to determine which one they want to call the frontage, and that has to be.
And then we
the
change
front.
the setbacks, whatever it says, the language that we have now, instead of just saying, you know, they choose it, and then, you know, make sure that, okay, they choose it, but the other lot behind that would be the rear.
What if we were to say the choice of the frontage is where they determine where their driveway is going to come in? So that's a 911 issue as well. Because the driveway is where the ambulance would want to, and fire truck would want to respond, and that would be the address. So that side would
Right.
be determined as the frontage, in my opinion.
I disagree.
Okay?
People should not be compelled to put the driveway through the front yard if there's some other way of doing it. And doing it through a side yard, it can be much more attractive, but to then have the setback on the side yard and move, you got say, a major road and a very small road. You want the driveway to be off the small road, but you want the visual appearance off of the more traveled road, if that's one of the goals, to set back from. Well, what you propose, you couldn't do that.
So I'm
Like
going to
the
ask
one-
Scott a
we just
question.
had one
Scott,
of those on Mass
when
Road.
911 is determining street addresses, how do they determine that? Based on access to the site? Is that how the,
I don't actually know if fire does all of that, so I'm not sure how they determine it.
well, I'm pretty certain that they use access to the lot as your street address, because I had
It
my
makes
first property
sense.
was a corner lot, and had an old driveway on Patty Hill Road, and my new driveway, I wanted to be on Stinson Road. And they told me you can't have both, you have to pick one or the other as your address where your driveway is going to be, and that was a 911
911
situation.
requirement.
But I would
But it
say,
doesn't
so
still
what?
have to be the
We're doing,
frontage, right.
we're doing zoning, not
Right.
911.
Yeah, but aren't they intertwined somehow, Jim?
No.
I don't think so, no.
Well, I find that
No.
disconcerting.
Remember, frontage is not access.
Yeah, I know. Oh, God.
I agree with just what Jim is saying. You've got your busy road here and your side road here, and they want the driveway to come in from here. You want that front setback to be further. So why make the front here and the smaller here? That makes sense to me. I think we leave it up to the developer to decide, but then once they decide, they have to,
But they have to declare it
right, they have to
during
declare
the time
it.
of application.
Right.
And if you go onto page 43 of our ordinance, which you all of course have, there, we separate front, rear, and side. So if you're gonna have it sort of compels them to have a bigger yard and back based on where they chose the frontage to be. But it also lets them have less side yard than the neighbor might want if they're the one on the, you know.
Doesn't it also determine setbacks or building locations, and they could be a lot closer to a neighbor than the neighbor,
That's what I just said, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem
So
with
there is
corner
a side,
lots.
there's setback requirements that may allow them to build 15 feet off the property line in certain cases.
We had one off of St. A's, we had that issue.
Yeah, I remember,
Yeah.
last year.
When the neighbors would have assumed a different,
Access.
you know, setback, side setback.
Okay.
So Joanne, what do we need to do to make that change then?
Do we care from a zoning
wanna
standpoint
just leave
what
it?
the answer is? Are we just trying to set a rule so people know? How often does it? how
That
often-
question goes over there, 'cause
Well,
how
it comes up,
But how often does it really matter to our consideration, other than just figuring out where you measure from? You know, what are we trying to achieve?
well, I think when someone's designing their project, they come in, they've been
Well,
coming
we-
in with all
Yeah,
different
we just need an
setbacks.
answer to their question.
Yeah.
But do we really care which answer they
Yeah,
choose?
right.
No.
And if we don't care, let them choose and then have the consequence spelled out.
Unless we care what they
Right, I agree.
So why worry about it? So let's go with, let them choose and then they don't have to ask us anymore.
declare it when they apply.
Yeah.
This is the frontage side.
You know, if there's some other zoning goal, a planning goal, tell me, but I'm not hearing one right now.
You kinda
So what
did
la-
that
so
with
what-
The Oak Lane one recently, where they
Yeah.
had Oak Lane
Right.
and Masks, and they did the setbacks. The front lot was, or the front of the lot was Oak Lane, so that's where the larger setback was. They basically dictated it themselves.
So how would you amend the language, Jim, to include what you're saying?
Does it need it?
I mean, you have to amend the language to state that you're giving the developer the right to choose where they want their frontage to be.
I don't think we have to stay. I think it's as is, that's what they're doing right now. The
Yeah.
front dimensions shall be observed adjacent to one of the frontages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
period.
You
You
pick one.
Right, tell us
Then
which
they
one's
say,
your
how we
front,
know?
which one's
You
your back.
you choose.
Where's the front of your house?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not, what's the consensus?
Moving on.
Or is there any more discussion first?
No.
All right,
No.
Dave,
It stays as it is.
Jim,
Stays as it is.
Barbara,
Stays.
Kimberly?
Stays.
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 Joe?
Yep,
Colin?
good.
Stays as it is, Joanne.
Okay.
Table of uses,
Making this
commercial
easy.
industrial flex zone.
Okay, the next one is on page 3, and then I've attached several maps that just show, the first one shows the entire layout of the zoning in our town, and the light purple, or I should call it lilac, is the commercial industrial flex, but then I've zoomed in a little bit for the next several sheets,
So
just so that
those
you
are
can see where it is.
close-ups of certain areas in the.
Yeah, it kind of goes down Mast Road. So what I've been noticing is that, that the zoning board has approved a few variances for residential-only developments. And on the last one, the Hemley application, which they filed today to go back to the zoning board. But they
Surprise,
filed a
surprise.
variance and an appeal. So anyway, they were granted, they had appealed, so the zoning board denied that request to have residential only in that zone. And applicant took it to the Housing Appeals Board, and the Housing Appeals Board said that they had done some things wrong, sent it back to the zoning board, and the zoning board then approved the use of residential in that zone.
On some planning basis or just because?
It had to do with the fact that the applicant said that they were, that it wasn't just out there on its own as residential, that it had connections to the commercial property, the Langley property next door and where the medical facility is. And so they said that it was almost the same thing of having that whole area
Although it was
as a
not the
mix,
actual same property.
even though it wasn't all one lot.
Yeah.
That's how they looked at it.
Yeah.
So I thought there's a couple ways to remedy this, because what's happening is we don't have a lot of commercial land in town, as you know, and we don't have a lot of the commercial industrial flex zone. And if you read the definition, which I don't know if I attached, oh yeah, I did, it's the page 3. It really sounds to me like when it was first thought of, that it was more for commercial service, light industrial, business parks and things like that. I don't think anyone thought that it would be developed in these piecemeal lots and people would be getting variances for everything that they wanted to do. So, oh, go ahead. So my first recommendation is to just remove the allowance of residential, because it does say in the ordinance that mixed residential / non-residential uses are allowed. So by going to the zoning board, they've been asking for the variances because they're doing just the residential, not the commercial portion of it. However, I mean, they could still, even if you were to take that sentence out, they could still ask for a variance, but it doesn't sound like, here it sounds like the board's in favor of that residential aspect of it, whereas if you took it out, they wouldn't be. The other thing you could do is, I don't know that we have time this year, but is to look at possibly doing more of a wide range CIFZ district, more of having maybe adopted as a innovative land use control, and have those certain types of uses go for a conditional use permit to the planning board versus getting variances from the zoning board. It's another way of looking at it.
It can't take it away completely because they can still get a variance or anything, but
Yeah.
it makes it, channels it towards us
Well, we have
to be
a
better.
follow-up question with that, Tim.
Go ahead, just, everybody can just speak up tonight.
That would also be consistent with the current commercial zone, because residential is a non-permitted use in a commercial zone.
Yeah, I think we should go that step to, because when you look at the definitions, not only take it out, but also say residential uses are not allowed in this district.
How does that protect us, Jim, in the eyes? I know you're the one that's been a legal advice here, but if someone was to take us to the Housing Appeals Board, do they have any leg to stand on if it is not permitted in our zone?
Are we on television? The Housing Appeals Board, 9 out of 10 times, will rule in favor of the developer, irrespective of what we say, do.
Okay.
I'll stop there. I won't
That's
say more.
reality.
I'll
It's
get-
reality.
So even if we have a statement in our ordinance that prohibits residential, it could still become residential if a board gets a
Well,
hold of it.
especially as Phil pointed out, if it's a variance, the ZBA will grant a variance, or deny a variance, and the Housing Appeals Board will reverse them for whatever reason they pick. If we have it as a conditional use permit, it keeps it more on our side, and we can start imposing more planning reasons, and might create a better record to
I like
withstand
that.
appeal. But that means more work for us.
Well,
And we've been trying to get rid of work, because, so that's the
Well,
trade-off.
Joanne's been trying so far with two things, and we've said too bad.
so is the protection of the commercial zone worth our efforts to create a requirement for a conditional use permit?
One of the reasons I thought, maybe I'm confusing districts, but when we first proposed, and this was back when Steve was planning director, mixed use is to have a way to use older structures that are in a commercial zone with an upstairs to allow residential. But it quickly turned into
Right.
building new
New stuff.
structures that were, you know, one or the other, not both.
90%
So-
residential,
Yeah, so it's
10%.
not achieving the original goal, which I thought was a good goal, it's just as it turned out. So maybe we jettison that earlier goal and just go back to keeping this commercial.
Yeah, and I think when we did that, we were also looking at ways of taking, like, home occupations that were accessory use in the residential and making these larger homes a combined use.
Correct, yes, yeah.
Well, then
Boy,
somehow
Phil,
we,
you're really
we,
dragging it right out of the old back of the brain
Jeez,
there.
yeah.
we pulled empty parcels into this though, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it didn't, because,
That doesn't do us any good.
yeah, but it's hard to zone for existing old buildings, but maybe we should have in hindsight. So the experiment has not been a great success, so we can go back and revisit it.
So Joanne, are you recommending conditional use permit?
That would be my recommendation at this point. I know that if, you know, not that I'm recommending anything like a performance zone, but the town of Bedford has a performance zone along their Route 3
Yeah.
district. And when they first started that district, it was completely, you know, commercial, industrial type uses. And a few years ago, they changed it, and now they allow residential, but only workforce housing. So
That's down in that Trader Joe's area?
Yes, along
Yeah.
there. The town of Hooksett has a performance zone along their Route 3 area, and it was, you know, set up for business use and kind of a mixture of business, commercial, industrial, light industrial. And they have never budged, and they don't allow residential in that zone at all. And I don't know if they've even approved any variances for that. So ours is sort of, it was a good intention, but no one seems to be sticking to it. And it seems to me that before we know it, there's other vacant land there, and before we know it, we're going to have
Well,
all
I
kinds of residential.
The intent of the original zone was to promote the commercial industrial use of the
For the
property
tax
for the
base.
zone, for the tax base. So I think we need to make, since that was our primary purpose,
So how
we
would
need
the
to go
language,
back and take that sentence out, just take it out.
how would the language be then for the inclusion of the avenue to be a conditional use permit? How would you rewrite this to state
Well,
that?
No, well, you
We
wouldn't.
don't. If we take out entirely residential use,
Right.
they still get a variance, you get a
Right.
variance for anything. But there's no other vehicle for them to put a residential use in.
Do we have to include that in our table of uses and write conditional use permit required?
We don't need one unless we're going to permit
Well,
residential with a conditional use permit.
This discussion was in regards to doing a different type of zoning arrangement, or in CI, not what we have now. As to what we have now for zoning, it's simply changing the permit.
Just eliminating that last
Right.
sentence.
I would also strengthen it by adding the residential uses are not allowed in this district.
So what's the flex part of it? We take out the flex. What's flexible about it now?
I don't know that there was anything flexible in the first place.
Is the flexible relate
It's
to the
getting less
commercial, is the flexible part of it relating to the commercial industrial?
No, it's related to having a residential component, or a mixed use component,
Kind of
rather.
written to be in between the little and the big, like flex is sort of,
Can we impose
Yeah, small
percentages,
bit.
Jim,
Of what?
of mixed use? It has to be 80% commercial and with a 20% allowance for residential.
Just keep residential out completely.
So the problem
Keeping
with
residential.
the problem with that is, and I've seen it happen before, is where someone comes in with a project and they'll have the percentage that you're asking for and it gets approved. And then they just build the residential portion
Right.
of it. And then they say, well, nobody's really looking for
Right,
commercial or office space
think
or
we've
whatever
heard that
the other
before.
was.
right.
I think we've actually heard that here at this table.
So we need to get rid of, in 238, if you're on page 3 of your handout tonight, Joanne.
Yeah.
If we're going to take out, as you propose, mixed residential, non-residential uses are allowed, we're deleting that sentence. It sounds like we're all agreed to that. You need to go to 238 and stop the sentence after residential uses are not allowed in this district, period, because we're getting rid of
Right.
mixed-use projects.
And I think that's where we should be.
Right.
But we're talking about commercial district, 238 or 239, commercial industrial flex zone?
Well, except,
I thought we were talking the flex zone 239, Barbara.
I know, but what is residential uses are allowed as part of a mixed-use project in a commercial district? Our whole point to have a mixed-use zone is the commercial industrial zone, right? We don't have a mixed commercial residential, we don't have a mixed industrial residential. You're mixing the commercial and industrial uses.
Village commercial allows mix too, right?
But that's a different.
So
That's
does
a
commercial,
different
according
district.
to section 5.9.
Yeah.
238 is just strictly commercial, Barbara.
Right.
Right.
So when you say remove residential uses are not allowed in this district except as part of a mixed use, you want to take off as part of a mixed use?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
I'm
agree
sorry,
with that.
I missed
Yeah.
that part.
After district.
Okay, and then the next one,
I mean, they can get a variance, but
Yeah,
Right.
and I
There's
think we ought
no-
to keep it clean, they're just not allowed.
So you want to
in the
eliminate from the word district on,
Correct.
Except
out?
as.
Right.
right, and that's consistent with industrial. If you look at the last sentence in industrial, it says residential uses are not allowed in this district.
okay.
Which it
So
goes to Kimberly's point, to add the sentence to the mixed, to the commercial industrial. I think we should get rid of flex. Just call it the commercial industrial zones.
If you, which one are we dealing with now? We're just dealing with
We're on
2.3.9?
238. Right.
No, 2.3.9.
Nine, right,
Yep,
We're getting rid of mixed
residential,
residential,
non-residential.
But if you go back, we go down that, 2.3.8, we need to talk about a little more if you go
Okay.
to. But take the meat cleaver to that too, I didn't stop for a minute.
All right.
Let's just deal with 2.3.9.
Okay.
Because there are residential units.
That's right, because if you look at the map,
Hmm.
our commercial is full of mixed use areas.
Well, a lot of them are pre-existing.
That's right,
was
yeah,
owned.
but, do you want to replace them, do you want to make them non-conforming, or do you want to continue that? It's a discussion, that's a good point. Maybe we don't want any more, but I don't want to change those neighborhoods.
All right, so but I
inadvertently.
guess we're in agreement that 239, we're getting rid of the last sentence and we're putting in residential uses are not allowed in this district.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is there any, either for, if you look at the commercial, the
Right.
mixed use, are some of these lots already residential, and we're making them non-conforming by doing that?
Well, that would be true.
Can
For
you,
example,
caveat
the page on your left hand there.
Yeah,
that's
no,
not-
we all know, looking at the map, that there are houses along here.
Jim, could you stipulate that if it is an existing residential lot, it's not applicable, something to that effect?
Well,
But what's
wouldn't
the
it be
residential
grandfathered at
lot?
this point?
An existing use is grandfathered, what if they want to replace the house? They couldn't.
I'm just trying to find a way to include those.
Well, but isn't that consistent with what we're trying to do? I mean, so if they have to replace the house, we'd rather it be commercial.
Is that fair? Is that fair to somebody that's lived on a lot all their life?
I don't know, I'm driving on Shirley, I'm driving on Have you driven up Wallace Road at all to see what's going on with that legal suit that had the easement to the landlocked parcel?
To Roberts.
I see there are carbon driveways up there.
It's criminal what's happening to the lots it's going through. It's awful.
I looked the other day when I went up through there.
I mean, Jim's point about if it's an existing use.
So our grandfathered clause says any legal and non-conforming use structure or lot that became non-conforming as a result of adoption of this ordinance or any subsequent amendment shall be deemed non-conforming but may continue in accordance with prior applicable law and ordinances. Any alteration or expansion or such non-conforming use structure or lot shall nevertheless be subject to all of the provisions of this ordinance and subsequent amendments hereto. So any alteration, expansion, if somebody wants to add an addition,
To their house.
they have to
They've
get a
lived there for 40
variance.
years.
So you're not depriving them of any of their rights, correct?
Well, how do you define a right? A right to expand your house? Is that a right? I'd say it's not a right. Right's pretty limited, but it's an expectation people have. You've got along Mass Road, you've got what's essentially a residential area that we were intending to allow commercial use of too. Have we now flipped this on its head and we say, well, you can't use it as residential? I don't think that was our intent.
I mean, our intent was to try to give people an option for what to do with houses on a very busy street,
Right.
that we didn't foresee any long-term viable residential use.
But people are still living there.
People are still there.
And some of them kind of like it as we develop the rail trail and stuff.
The parcel across from the Villa Augustina is commercial industrial flex use, and yet it's 100% residential. There's no commercial, no industrial, no mix.
That has a variance.
Yeah. So is it non-conforming?
It is, but it has a variance, so
It's
they can
Conforming by
continue with the
variance.
residential.
Well, right, so that's kind of the answer to your question. So we create non-conforming lots, but if they were to need something different, then couldn't they come back for a variance?
So variances also create non-conforming lots then, correct?
Well, no, a lot is conforming by variance. It's not, it's
Right.
non-conforming, it doesn't conform to zoning, but if you grant a variance to allow it, then it's
Becomes conforming?
By
it's
variance.
conforming,
Wait,
as long
it's
as it
not-
conforms with the variance.
Right.
How many angels dance in a head of a piano? I don't know.
All right, members, what do we want to do?
All right, so Jim's point is that maybe adding the language residential uses are not allowed in this district is not appropriate.
To the ones that are already residential.
Well, can we make an exception on that from the date?
Why don't we,
Forward.
do we go grandfathered residential uses are allowed in this district?
Well, that's redundant. If they're already
I know.
grandfathered, they're
Right.
permitted, so.
The only thing that it does, though, well,
It explains.
I mean, I didn't want to say existing, because nobody's going out and taking a picture of.
Yeah, no, you have to. Phil, what's the answer to this mountain tonight?
putting it in there sometimes makes current people that currently have property there a little easy, you know, they're not so anxious about it to change. That's one thing it does.
I think the way that it's worded now, mixed residential / non-residential. Mixed residential / non-residential uses are allowed. Well, what's there now are single-family houses, not mixed use.
True.
So they're already non-conforming grandfathered. Right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. We've already done the damage to them. So they put a barber shop on the first floor.
I mean, we have to to stop the
Code of
bleeding.
home occupation.
We need to stop these houses.
Home occupations are separate, its own.
Right,
they
it's a
don't
different
count.
animal.
Yeah, don't mix those up with real commercial uses.
Right, it's a accessory use.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
I
leave?
think maybe we just take the sentence out and leave it.
Take out the sentence that Joanne has yellowed out,
Yeah.
mixed residential, not,
Well, then, what do we do to the table of uses? That's just whether residents are.
So take out the sentence but not add the sentence that you have in the other
Right.
two.
We require, if you look at the table of uses on page 29 in the ordinance, which you'll have, it's, the chart. It has dwelling units as part of a mixed use in the CIFZ zone, I think that's what I'm talking about, by conditional use. It does not permit other single, dwellings, doesn't permit other dwellings. So they have to get a variance.
So if
Yeah.
you took it
Yeah.
out, that would go away here.
We would just. We just.
I think those other lots, those single-family lots, I mean, the houses are definitely non-conforming, because they're not a mixed use.
Correct.
So I don't think you have to worry about those. It's been years since that was changed. But if you wanted to eliminate just the residential use, then you would need to eliminate number 6 on this chart.
I'm not in a hurry to push out residential uses along Mass Road, defines the character of the town.
Right.
And, it's easy when you look at the land on the south side of Mass Road, there's large tracts, but the little lots on the north side, a little harder to.
we might be worrying about something that's not gonna become a problem in the next 5 years, because I'm kind of convinced that we're gonna overbuild housing in the next 5 years with everything that's going on. And suddenly, no one's gonna ask for permits to build in the commercial flex zone in the next 5 years, because there's gonna be an abundance of housing and there's gonna be a surplus of housing. So why would they wanna invest?
before.
Why would they wanna invest 20 million in a new project for condos once all the condos that are coming are built, Bog Road, the factory property, next to the Shell station? There's gonna be a lot of housing available, and is it all gonna get snapped up? I don't know.
Yeah, can't
But
predict that.
we might be worrying about a problem here that may not exist in 3 years, so.
Well, and the other thing, as I'm looking at this, doing anything other than, if I look at 5.9, there are lots of references to residential mixed use in CIFZ and in 591. Because if I looked at the table of uses, it has 2 references to 5.9 and 5.15 for CIFZ.
How do we strengthen the protections against complete residential housing development that's not mixed use?
You state that there must be a mixed-use element.
Well, that's.
Must be a mixed-use.
Well, and we haven't.
But the Housing Appeals Board wouldn't.
Well, you know what, we gotta take our chances with them. Who knows what's gonna happen? Maybe not everybody's gonna run to the Housing Appeals Board. We don't know that. It's not cut in stone. Doesn't it cost money to go there?
No, well, I mean, I come back to, we're sort of digressing. The point is that our commercial industrial flex zone, the sort of mixed-use piece of it was sort of an add-on. The initial intent was to use the commercial industrial and give them some flexibility in the types of buildings or uses on the lot. And so we're just saying, we're not throwing the add-in of the residential anymore into it. We want to go back to the commercial industrial which was part of the reason we did it, was for tax base and for planning and because of the location.
That's the reason I put this on here.
Right.
Because just looking at what was happening and
Right.
we, like I said before, we have very little commercial tax base.
Right.
Not commercial tax base, but commercial land and commercial industrial flex land that, if it's all eaten up with multifamily projects, we have no room left for actual business use.
But I think this mixed-use development paragraph would need work.
Yeah.
Would it be too vague to state that standalone residential projects are not allowed in this zone? Would that be too
Well,
vague?
The only problem is they start out as a mixed use. And as Barbara pointed out, and it's happened before, they do the residential, and then they have the section that's supposed to be that, and then they can't get anybody to do it, and it stays empty.
But isn't that a condition that we grant to them when we grant phases?
Well, I mean, that sort of goes to the development reg. We're sort of wrestling with two different things. There's the zoning piece of it, and then there's what do we do with our development regs, where I know I've talked to Joanne about, the residential component is, building permits will not be issued for the residential component until 50% of the commercial component is built, but that's a development reg type thing.
Well, that's how you bolster any statements you make at this level, too.
Yeah, because if you don't have those sorts of restrictions in place,
That's exactly what happens.
right.
And we're working on development regs right now, right, with Hoyle Tanner? Well, it's not too late to include that
We can
language
do that. We
in-
can do that at any time.
At any time. I like the idea of leaving the mixed-use element in, but I like the idea of also making it clear that standalone residential will not be permitted in the zone.
Yeah, but what's standalone? Is
Well,
standalone a building?
Standalone is the project that's across from the
Has a
village.
breezeway. Oh, sorry. that's less than-
Common door,
To the
common
barber shop.
door.
I just keep going back to what Joanne said. I mean, this came out of a planning exercise of where, if we want economic development in our town, we want it within the corridors. You don't want to build your barber shop off of Durango. You want it someplace where people are going to see it, they're going to drive by it, they're going to use it. And we're letting this get gobbled up with residential, when the whole point is that's not where we want the residential. And then when you have mixed use, you end up with residential arguing with the noisy flashing light of the, car wash and then complaints, and then we have issues. Like that's another reason why we have these zones together is that commercial people, like those uses are similar. So we don't have someone trying to go to bed at midnight and they've got, noise from a bar. Like that, I think we should take it out. I do.
Do we
Well, our
solicit-
goal has always been to protect our limited commercial land.
Right.
Make sure that it's only used for commercial purposes, not let it get nibbled away around the edges by
Right,
other uses,
right.
like residential uses.
Right.
And I think we have to keep that in mind, and I think anytime we start doing that, we start to erode that. In my opinion, we're moving backwards.
Right. It's not working as it is right now.
And especially to allow it to happen by variance. That's what's
Do
wrong.
we solicit?
Oh, we can't stop that.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying, you
Do we
need to put
solicit
certain
input?
things in place, hopefully you'll steer them away.
Do we solicit input from the school department on all this residential stuff and how it's gonna affect the schools in the long term?
We used to, but we haven't.
They did just recently submit comments for the Hemley apartments, or I shouldn't say apartments, condos. And I didn't read it, Scott came in and gave it to Patty, but it was, it had suggestions in there about certain things.
The last time I remember them coming in was for the Moose Club Apartments down behind the Shaws.
They're asking for that a
did.
study be
I
done.
remember them coming
for
in
the
and making
impact to the
statements
school.
about increased, costs for the schools and if this development got approved and on, because that was the one where they wanted to double, if I'm not mistaken, the allowable units on that site. And then there was the school department commented on the impact to the school system.
But didn't somebody come back and say there was only 1 1/3
I don't remember
students per
the
unit?
comments, I just remember that the school department showed up to speak at that meeting.
Was that related because of Bartlett already being overcrowded?
I don't know the particulars, but that's the last time I remember them making public comment on any application.
Well, my comment wasn't about the school, it was about the developer that came back with some type of a study, and it had some, like 1 1/3 person per unit or
I
something.
don't mean
like-
to be rude, but developers get the study written the way they want the study written.
Tim, I'm just
Shocked.
stating.
What are we gonna do with the commercial industrial flex district?
Yeah, let's go back to the topic at hand. Thank you,
We're an
Madam
hour
Vice Chair.
over.
for getting us back on track.
Almost 8:30.
We're gonna be a little late, unfortunately. All right, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna leave it alone, folks? We're gonna take that one sentence out as the yellow line suggests?
But we have to, if we're gonna do that,
We gotta go
we
back
have
and
to
go-
amend other sections, like 5.9. It's a bigger,
Table too, right?
yeah.
Would this be a,
And
would
the
this be a
table.
a further study and come back to it next year?
No,
amendment?
I don't, I would really like to get this done
Yeah.
because, you know,
Yeah.
it's a year.
Right.
It's-
Okay,
this
I'm
is-
not trying to
Get
get rid of
public
it, I'm
comment,
just trying
put
to
something out
find a
there and get public
consensus.
comment on it, for sure.
Because we have time to come back and do the cleanup
Right.
that we have to do in the rest of the ordinance, right?
Yes.
We could remove the sentence and put it back in during discussion purposes if we wanted to, or amend 5.9.
All right, the one question on 2.3.8, are we still leaving the period after district, or?
Yeah, yes, let's strike the rest.
We're leaving except as part of a mixed-use project, we're not messing with the commercial district, right? When we're talking about the,
We had
this-
talked about.
No, we talked
had
about this-
a period after district and strike the last. that's
Are
what
we still, are we,
but that wasn't on the agenda for tonight, the agenda
No,
was
I
for the
think,
flex
I
zone.
think it was pointed out that that was intended to be in the commercial district, not the commercial industrial flex zone. I think the issue is if you leave the mixed-use projects in the commercial district, because that was sort of what the intent was, I think you need to look at the fact you have residential uses are not allowed in this district under industrial district. So I do think that the commercial industrial flex zone, I would like to put that sentence in. And then the mixed-use projects are relating to the commercial district.
And leave it or take them
And-
out? Leave the wording the way it is or strike that?
Leave the wording as it's part of the commercial district.
Okay,
Leave the wording for industrial district. And I guess the commercial industrial district, flex zone, I would say residential uses are not allowed in this district, that the mixed use was intended to deal with the commercial district for village-scaled commercial operations. That's sort of a different zoning area.
I also see it coming
I
up,
agree.
since these residential units in the commercial industrial flex zone, what's gonna happen when an industrial property wants to move into the flex zone next to the condos? What are the people in the condos all gonna start screaming?
Well, I mean, that's
Yeah.
a sort of a
I
problem.
know, but if we're gonna permit it, then we have to deal with the backlash later. So I agree that we should strike mixed residential and non-residential uses are allowed.
If you look at the zoning map, look at this one.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of purple. I mean, for example, where the villa is, isn't that in this zone? What have you just done to the permitted uses of the villa?
I lost it. Is it in the back?
So here's, yeah, just keep going.
Thank you.
which map you on there, Jim?
This is the one on page, I guess it's after page 4,
Where the
5,
villa is.
6, I guess it would be.
It looks
Or
like this.
4.
Bill, it
4,
looks like
excuse me.
this.
That's not what he's looking at.
This one here.
From this-
Oh, no.
Large version.
Oh, I'm looking at the one with the villa, close up.
Oh,
Yeah, no, this one.
I didn't, I'm concerned because we got some lots.
That's
that
what he's looking at.
Oh, yeah.
There's an expectation of how they can be developed, and we changing the rules on them.
well, I mean, I don't,
You know, the alternatives are rezone some of those lots. But
I think put those.
The other way.
there you go.
I agree with you.
The other thing is, as far as notification, if we change the lots, I think it's under 100 parcels are affected, we have to notify. If it's over, I don't think we do need to.
That's right.
Well, I mean, using the villa as an example, that's not, there's been nothing going on in that building for years, so I don't know what would be allowed in that now anyways,
Well,
other than the lights are all on at night.
Yeah.
They
You
don't
aren't
go
kidding,
away.
at 4:30 in the morning, though,
Yeah,
the place is
they're
lit
on
up
all
like
night
they're
now.
having
I don't know
school.
what's
It's either-
going on.
They can't get residential in there, it's just, the building's too bad, it's too expensive.
Yeah, yeah.
They might as well gut it. That developer after developer, I think, just keeps coming in there and saying, this is
That's why the
millions
school
of
department
dollars.
walked away from it, right?
Right, or, you know, they raise the building, I think, and people walk away from it, because they don't want to do
Is it on
that.
National Register of Historic Places yet?
I don't know, that's a
Probably
good
gonna
question,
be next.
but it,
Doesn't matter, still, if you want to develop, you got asbestos in that.
yeah, I don't think their residential's going in there. So that's one that we're using as an example of what we're worried about. I would say that's not
Okay.
something that we'd
Okay,
be too worried about.
okay. I just noticed I saw the lights on when I went home from
Right.
town. Counting votes at
On
1:30 at
and
night.
on.
Masonry
Full
here,
time.
front pillars.
11:30, we're early.
I left early. 'cause
Oh,
I
boy.
I got bored and
So
so
we
I
need to make a
said,
decision about what we're doing.
we can throw it out there as a trial balloon and see what people say.
Okay.
Get to the hearing.
So we're not, are we messing with it, Jim?
We can take out the.
Yeah,
take out the yellow.
Yeah,
See what
just
happens.
notice that we're gonna take out.
All right, so, Dave, would you give an opinion on taking the yellow out?
Can I just get clarification? Just taking out the yellow or adding residential uses are not allowed in this district?
You don't have to say what is not allowed, you just have to say what is allowed.
So just take it out.
Just
I'm
take it
just,
out.
I'm just concerned because it says specifically in industrial
Right,
that it's
yeah, I
not
understand
allowed.
that.
So, you know, Kimberly's point is then we should put it right.
Yeah, if you want, I don't care.
I think we should. Residential uses are not allowed
Take
in
it
this
out
district.
and add it.
And then make the other changes to.
And which
In
one are you
5.9,
talking about?
take out the
In
reference to,
5.3.9.
take out the
And the
reference to
table.
CIFC
And the table,
and the
too.
table.
Okay.
And leave the mixed use, because we're saying you can do it as part of commercial district.
Okay.
Or
Okay,
village commercial.
consensus poll, David?
Take out the yellow sentence.
And add the sentence that says, do residential is not allowed?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, not allowed.
Yes.
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 Okay. Let's go to tattoos.
Let's go get one.
Something.
The column,
Simple.
the answer is,
A little butterfly, simple.
the answer is,
Well, no, when we started, we first did this, tattoos were suspect, it's just drunken sailors who got tattoos.
we got them in school.
Now they're
Hey, we've got some
they're
tattoos at
mainstream.
this table.
Mainstream.
Yeah, almost
They're
there.
vo-
If you don't have a
chic.
tattoo, there's something wrong with you.
They're very
So,
chic.
so it's, I'm not showing you the same restrictions that we once thought we did.
No.
I mean, why,
I would agree with you.
why do we treat them differently than others?
Subway.
Sure.
So Joanne, your comment then is staff is not recommending a change to this section, or you're recommending
so-
we change the definitions?
So change the definition. So under 5.4, it says tattoo parlor, eliminate that whole first paragraph. That's what it states now, that's our current. And replace with the second paragraph, which I'll give you time to read.
Okay, why isn't this in the definition section? 5.4 is shall be permitted subject. What you have means a business, having as, that's a definition to me.
You know,
Well, I'm just going by where it was before. That's always
Well, I
where
just
it was.
realized that mine is a year old, but I didn't think we changed tattoo last year.
No, I mean, that's where it's been. It's always been under 5.4 since it's
well,
been
Phil's
there.
point is definitions should be defining.
Right.
That's fine.
But I would move that we delete it entirely.
You mean
Delete the whole
don't
thing.
even discuss tattoo parlors?
I would just treat them as any other commercial use. Why do they need to be treated differently?
So they are in the use, under the use table.
Why can't they be within 1,000 feet of another tattoo parlor?
Well, yeah, this was a hot ticket item a
what's the
couple years
problem?
ago.
This
Sure
is
is.
huge.
Yeah,
Well, that's
huge.
what I'm saying, that should be removed.
I mean, we've got them, I look out from the Y when I work out and I can see two of them right off in downtown Concord.
Are there very seedy people hanging around you? Of
No. No, they look like normal stores.
course they do.
You just
They're
go and get a
businesses.
tattoo. You
There's
get a
one
haircut
across,
in one,
one across the street from Hinsdale Town Hall.
yeah. So I just,
And they're generating tax revenue.
yeah, my libertarian streak, which I do have occasionally, says, why are we regulating them in this manner?
So they are separate for some reason under the permitted uses in the table of principal uses.
Yeah, it is big deal. So take
Under
it out completely.
F7.
So you want to strike all mention of
they
tattoo
need a
parlors in
special
all our
exception.
regulations?
No, I just treat them as any other retail use. Why? How about barber shops? Do we restrict barber shops?
So is the proposal?
Well, I mean, when this, in fairness to our obsession with this and hours spent on this issue, there were also, you know, there was a lot of health concern about this stuff when it was first becoming a thing. So, I mean, there were reasons that people were worried
And
about
the
it.
Whole
regulation,
different landscape now.
Right.
Well, last time it came up too, there, I think the point was if you looked at where it was not allowed, there was almost no place to put one in town, and I think that was the,
That's
Yeah.
all.
right,
That was the way of
That
saying.
just doesn't make
Right,
sense now.
so it kind of zoned itself
Yeah.
out of it, so,
Right.
so I,
We're missing an opportunity.
So if I may summarize your opinion, Jim, we should eliminate all mention of tattoo parlors in all of our regulations and
Just treat them
condition
like any other
charts.
retail.
And they're
Business
just
to
another
business.
retail
Yep.
business.
Scott is
It's very
really
mainstream
wondering
now.
about the
Yeah.
wisdom of staying here tonight for this.
I should have stayed in
has a
Chelsea.
tattoo.
Does anybody
is
have,
fine.
does anybody have a dissenting opinion to Jim's suggestion? David?
No,
Has
no
there been?
other opinion.
Has there been any planning issue, Joanne, or that you're aware of in regards to anybody inquiring about any of this?
Yes, that's
Okay.
why I brought this up.
Okay, so let's
So
hear
there
what-
was a tattoo parlor a couple months ago who was looking to go in, and I think they did go into the shopping plaza where
yeah, it did.
the
The Shaws.
Shaw's?
The Shaws, I'm thinking of the bouncy place. The Shaws used to be.
That's what
I
you were
never
doing.
remember the name of
The
it.
bouncy
Fun
place.
spot for whatever.
Oh, I
Fun
thought they were
City.
in the strip next to the Bag Diner and Udon Thai, isn't
Yeah,
there?
that's where I thought it was.
And
That
has
might be
anybody
another-
Wherever, let's
noticed?
go.
Okay,
So they
great.
were too close to the residential behind them.
Yeah, that's what it
And they had to get
A
a
variance?
special exception from the zoning board.
And they got it,
They did.
because they're open.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's what got me thinking, like, this is weird. Why does somebody need to get a special exception for
So
this?
just off the top of my head, Jim, if we were to throw this away completely and treat it as any other business, would that whole special exception thing become null and void for a business like that? Yeah, so they wouldn't have any marks on their permanent record at that point?
Are they erasable? Removable?
I don't know.
You mean that particular business?
I'm just saying, because right now they have a special exception to be closer to the residential behind it.
Right.
In the event that we eliminate all this,
They
then
could-
they transfer just to a regular business.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
I agree with that.
So I asked David for an opinion. David has said he's in favor, I believe he said he's in favor of eliminating everything. Jim?
Yeah, I'm in favor of eliminating everything about tattoo.
Yeah.
All mention of
Any other
tattoos.
business.
For the
Like
record,
any
I don't
other
have a
business.
tattoo, but,
Barbara?
yeah,
Eliminate.
but I will one of these
I'm in
days.
favor of eliminating.
I agree with everyone else so far, eliminate it.
Yeah.
I'm impartial to it, doesn't matter to me.
Okay, Joanne. So that means you're gonna have the big eraser for the whole book.
Okay.
Okay, section number 5, eliminate the entire section.
Ooh, good.
So the last one is number 6, which falls under violations, and they're just adding a sentence at the end that states, in accordance with RSA 676:17 in the town's.
Excuse me, Joanne, you went by
Yeah.
number 5.
Yeah, let's eliminate entire section.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Sorry.
thought that was tattoos.
I was eliminating things.
Number 5 is the issue about commenting on certain plans to the planning board. When someone comes in for a variance or a special exception and it's commercial use or a multifamily, they need the planning board comments, or they need to ask for planning board comments.
To zoning board of
To
adjustment.
the zoning board of
Okay.
adjustment, so I'm suggesting we eliminate that.
Because we always say
Because
we have no
we always
comment.
say no comment. Or we just say follow the plan, the best planning
it's-
procedure.
Correct, and people have said that it's probably not the best thing to have in there because they are a judicial board.
Now, was this from them? Is this one from the zoning board of adjustment?
I think we
No,
should take it
I don't
out.
have anything
I'd
from the
suggest
zoning
we
I
would.
do think that this got put in at some point because of concern about the fact that planning considerations were not being considered at all by the zoning board, that, you know, and we were trying to get some focus in the zoning board as to something other than the particular square that was in front of them on the plan, to understand what the intent of the entire area was as to zoning. I mean, I think we sort of,
Right.
I mean, we've sort of come from full circle on that, because I think the issue is there again today, but I think that's why we did it.
It was.
Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
that's what I thought.
But did it do any good?
So I have a question for the educated elite here, is if the zoning board of adjustment grants a variance for something, and we say they didn't consider our planning, for instance, do we have the right to deny that in its entirety and say, no, you can't do that?
We could appeal it.
Or does the zoning board of adjustment's decision compel us to approve a site plan?
No, it just establishes, as Phil was describing earlier, the zoning status. Doesn't, we would, if they allow the use by variance, we would review it like any other application that doesn't violate zoning, but that's all it does. We
So
still have-
ultimately, we
a full
could
site
deny
plan.
the application in its entirety.
But not
No.
based on
No.
zoning.
Not based on,
Not based, right.
it comes over to us satisfying the
No, on
zone.
planning issues, we could deny it on planning issues.
Yeah.
Good, so that even
We
if
always
zoning
can.
does approve something, and we decided they didn't follow our planning guidelines, we could
No, no, no,
deny
no,
the
no,
project.
I think you're talking two different things.
Right.
Okay,
Zoning and planning are different things. If I may, the problem now is if we comment negatively and the variance is granted, let's say, it comes before us, the applicant's gonna say we prejudged.
right,
So we made problems for ourselves, we didn't make it better. So
Okay.
that's why this should come out.
so this section should be eliminated.
I think it should, I think it creates more risk than benefit.
Any
even
other
though
discussion on this section?
The original purpose was laudable.
Thank you, Jim. Any other discussion on this section?
I would just point out the Housing Appeals Board has referenced it in a decision, and perhaps we need to get rid of
Right.
it, just in case we.
Carlos, do you have a comment?
What is the text in red? I'm trying to, I don't
That's
recognize.
That's a different-
violation
That's-
number
Wait,
six.
wait
That's-
wait
Oh,
till
I'm
we
sorry,
get to that,
I'm
because I
sorry.
have a similar motion to make
I'm
as to
sorry.
section 15.8, but let's get there.
So we're all in
Okay,
agreement on.
so
15.
we're on number 5, which
Yeah,
is to eliminate the
yeah,
entire
yeah.
section where we comment to the zoning board of adjustment as a planning
Right.
board.
Yeah,
David?
I'm thinking about just taking the opposite opinion, but
Well, you're welcome to, that's your job.
no. Jim, you made a good argument, take it out.
Jim?
Yes. No, I like David's view, I'll keep it in. No, I take it out.
Yes.
Take
Kimberly?
it out.
I say take it out.
yeah,
Gone.
get rid of it.
Okay, Joanne, next. Number 6, this is from the town
I'm
administrator?
going
This is from the town
I'm going to suggest we delete section 15.8 in its entirety because it's governed by statute. And if we put anything in here, we arguably have limited our remedies, not granted more. We already have those in some matters statute, not zoning.
Okay, Jim, so can Joanne explain why this was added in here by the town
Be-
administrator?
No, he's added some more words, because people like to add words, but read the whole thing. It sets out a process
Right.
on doing it. What if the code enforcement officer does not follow this process, which we have made up? Have we now deprived us of an effective remedy? The statutes provide the remedies. We don't need to spell out the procedure here. And to the extent we try to, I think we've created a box around ourselves.
And Joanne, is there a reason why you copied on this last page the Article 10 from 2011?
I would take out 15.6, mostly 15.6 while we're at it, but
I did because the red text referenced that article
Okay,
from town meeting.
so the voters voted on the Article 10 at a town meeting in 2011. So does that mean anything to what, if we strike this, we're still okay?
Well, it says here in accordance with RSA 676-17, so I'm assuming that that language is included in that RSA.
It says to see if the town will vote to adopt an ordinance pursuant to RSA 3139C, which is different. So I'm just wondering if the town voted on something, if we have to be careful what we strike.
Let me do a, for instance, you have remedies under 676-17. You also have remedies under the statute under 676-17A to get a cease and desist order. But if we specify in accordance with 676-17, haven't we taken away our power to use 676-17A, because it's not specified in the ordinance? If we say nothing, then you've got all those statutory remedies, as well as going to Superior Court to get an injunction, which you
It's
have.
not there in the statutes to fall back.
Yeah.
Well, what if we just eliminate the existing wording and just say violations
Will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
no, just follow state statutes?
Yeah, I don't think you have to say that.
Well, I was just saying, just to leave a section in that addresses
Something that
violations.
says- Why don't we suggest to Joanne, because that's a good point, say something that says, come up with some wording that says, if you're a bad boy, we'll come after you, without limiting how we would do that. But I would otherwise take this out.
Can we just check what RSA 3139C is? Because that's the question I'm asking, is, it was voted on in 2011 as an article.
So, what is it?
RSA 3139-C. It's the last page of everybody's packet.
Yeah, it's actually Article 10, and it's the first line.
31,
Colon 39-C.
Are you using your large paper, Jim?
39.
31 colon, what is it, 39?
And it
Dash C?
sounds like it was an ordinance that the
3139?
selectmen adopted.
31
That's what I
colon
did. That's what I'm trying to
Dash
39-C.
C.
Which page you saying?
The
Right
very
here, Phil.
last page of the
Phil.
packet that Joanne gave us.
Right here.
It looks like something that was voted on in 2011 as
This
an
one?
article.
Yeah, go, open that page and right by your
There is
thumb.
no
and it's right there at the bottom.
3139.
Right
Oh,
here.
Article 10.
31 colon 39-C.
Small c, right?
Yeah.
this is it, right here.
But I'm looking in my book.
And it doesn't exist.
I mean, if it's out of date, it's out of date, so that's.
I don't know what 30, I don't know what that is.
Maybe it's just not included in our.
It's possible,
Because I tried to
Maybe
find
it's
stuff in that book one time, Jim, when I had my book with me.
because this
and I
book
couldn't
doesn't
find it.
include anything.
Yeah, it doesn't include anything.
But the things have been
Right.
dropped.
Why don't I check on that?
Could it be one that was eliminated?
Yeah, well, there was a lot, the whole zoning section used to be an earlier, I think it was an RSA 31 pack. And then it was all moved to the back and they changed it, so some of those old references just don't apply anymore. But I
I'll
don't
check
know
on that
that.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just making
why I
sure we don't
thought if we
change
had
something that was voted on.
Right.
Right.
That's why I thought if
But-
we had something that was generally that says that we follow the state
Yeah,
statutes.
yeah. But if you look, while we're at it, sometimes look at 15.6. Somebody's drunk when they read that, wrote that. This is
15.6.
BCEO. Maybe next, we can have a workshop on what that section means.
15.6.
Yeah, and,
I wrote that, I made a memo to check that.
but we don't have to do that now.
Okay, we're gonna make a decision on this fixed 15.8 at this time, or are we gonna let Joanne do a little more research and come back to us?
We have a meeting next week, right? You can
Yeah.
just give us an
Yeah,
update
we
next
do.
week.
And you come back with an analysis of 15.6 and what the world is trying to do.
Okay, does anybody else have any more business before we conclude tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
I'm waiting for anybody who has any more business.
Second.
Okay. There is a motion by Phil to adjourn, seconded by Kimberly. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, we are adjourned. Thank you, GTV.